league was. I guess Novak was talking about
Yeah,
ATP guaranteeing some minimum
yeah.
salaries or whatever. What are your thoughts on that? And do you feel the PTPA help kind of push them to that?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, no doubt. I mean, I definitely salute that kind of announcement and decision from ATP. And I think the bottom line is that we all involved in the tennis ecosystem have to try to collectively um, create an environment in the future where more tennis players, both male and female, will be able to live from the sport. So that's at it. That's in the core of PTPA. That's our biggest mission. And if we contributed to this announcement of ATP, great. I think we did. We were talking about this actually 3 years ago. Vasek and I, when we founded the PTPA in 2020 US Open. And I remember having lots of press conferences about that and answering questions of you guys on, what is the mission and the vision, and trying to raise the awareness of how little the number of players who live from this sport is globally. And we have, I think, is it 450 players maybe globally, male, female, singles, doubles, that live from tennis. That is by some statistics, the third most watched sport and popular sport in the planet, followed by 1.3 or 4 billion people on the planet. So that's for me concerning. There's a very long way to go, but it is a step in the right direction.
We were just talking before you came in about live golf. And I got a bunch of us. I'm curious to hear yours. How vulnerable do you think tennis is to a structure like that? Someone coming in offering life-changing money to a group of some of the best tennis players in the world, and how beatable you think they might be playing for some of those guys?
Well, I wouldn't say tennis is vulnerable. I think, well, at least my mentality is always trying to negotiate from position of strength rather than position of weakness. And I think our advantage is, as tennis collectively, is that we are a sport that is very traditional, very historic sport. Four Grand Slams that are four pillars of our sport have been there for 125 plus years. And we must not forget that when we talk to anybody. I think the problem that we have, both on men and women's side in tennis in the governance, is that we're too fragmented, and that the fact that I mean that both in ATP and WTA governance you have 50% of ATP and WTA belongs to players and 50% to the tournaments, and in most of the cases you're always going to have a conflict of interest. So if we look back at when the tours merged, I mean, to create an ATP tour, for example, which was, what was it, 1990. You know, I understand the idea of us being together and collectively bargaining and working on improving the value and increasing the value and improving our sport. But in essence, if you actually go to the very structure and the system that is in place, I was part of the council and president of the council for 6 7 years, so I understand how things work. Players get the shorter end of the stick 90+% of the time. So why? It's just because the system is structured and founded in such a way which doesn't allow players to actually have a decision making role. We do have our player board representatives that are three, and then you have three from the tournament side, and then you have CEO or the president that breaks the even vote. But in many of the cases, when you want to make a significant difference, you have to have a supermajority, and most of the times that's not going to happen because the two sides have a just different interest. So that is why PTPA needs to exist and needs to be there for players, because it's just representing and having 100% of the players' interest at its core. And I know that for the last 3 years, ATP and WTA, particularly, and some other governing bodies in our sport have not been really supportive of PTPA, or I would say have been pretty much ignoring PTPA. But we are there, and we are getting stronger and stronger day by day, gaining more trust and more support from the players. Players recognizing the importance of PTPA as an organization for them and representing their rights. Because in the end of the day, we are the only association in our sport that really has only 100% interest of players. All the other associations don't have that. So that's what we've been trying to talk about, I think, and really bring the light to that fact and to that issue, because I see it as an issue. I was in the council. I understand, that players, who are coming and going to the council, that's basically the only vehicle or the only platform where you could try to contribute to some positive change for players. But when you're actually spending more time in the tennis politics, you understand how system actually fails players. And I understand the enthusiasm and excitement of players that want to be in the council. And as I said, I was there. But then, in the end of the day, your primary job is to hit the tennis ball and think about your body and how you can perform your best. Whereas all the other stakeholders are actually primarily thinking about how to, work on the tennis politics and tennis business. So that's why it was one of actually reasons why we are, as players, I think, not in an ideal position. But the more we are active as an association for players, the more of this kind of announcements, as the last one of ATP will come out, hopefully. And think ultimately, we want to have a seat on a table, decision-making table. I think that's inevitable. It's going to happen sooner or later. How long it will take, we don't know. It just depends how quickly they will accept us or embrace us, or willing to, or how fast they were willing to speak to us and work with us.
That's true on the women's side too. So John Isner, Vasek, and Novak all served on the player council of the ATP. Bethany Mattek-Sands also served on the player council of the WTA. And I think that's a really important point, that, these are players who really tried to affect change from within the existing system. And what they realized was the system is not structured properly, and it's not structured the way other truly global sports, soccer, basketball, baseball, none of those sports are structured in that way. And so there's a reason why they haven't had the same gains that those other athletes have had.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little, we were talking to Vasek earlier about the U.S. Open prize money payouts, and specifically out during COVID, the winner's prize got cut by quite a bit, while the qualifiers in early rounds were increased by a lot, and that seems to have shifted this year with the big increase in the winner's prize and not as much for the early rounds. So what are your thoughts on sort of this differing changes every year, and what would you like to see in terms of the difference level?
Yeah, well, I think it was very positive that we saw that kind of an increase of the early rounds and qualifying rounds during COVID, because players who are lower ranked logically are struggling the most, and more than us top players. I personally am not, part of PTPA. I'm not here sitting with you because I want more money for myself. It's not the case. I'm fine for this life and many other lives, but I definitely want to see a change at the base level. Because 150th player on the planet struggles and often has to travel without coach, and people don't realize how expensive this sport is. I think they really don't realize, because professional tour, men and women tour, demands constant travels. And obviously in the last few years, because of COVID, because of many different things, the prices of airplane tickets, accommodations, all these different things has increased, maybe even 2-3 folds, so that affects directly the budget of those players that are playing on a challenger level or trying to make it to a 250 category, trying to make it to top 100 and eventually get their spot in a Grand Slam main draw guaranteed, because that's the players who are lower ranked and who are able to make a cut for Grand Slams and be able to play 4 main draws in a year makes a significant difference, because Grand Slams are paying the most, and they are earning the most in our sport. And when it comes to distribution this year, comparing to COVID and how it should be done, that's something that needs to be discussed on the table, because I still feel, because of the reasons that I stated before, we don't, as players, have the best possible representation on those negotiation tables, and we need to try to make that better and make our position stronger, so that we can fight for more prize money, especially the early rounds.
Non-financial question. Some of the women players were upset at the earlier Grand Slams that maybe they were getting booed because of the non-handshake thing, and they were saying the tournament referee should say there's not going to be a handshake at England's match. You ever talk to players about that? About what the tour should do? Should someone announce what's going to happen to protect the players so they don't get booed for a handshake?
Yeah, I followed. I followed what was happening, and I think that it's fair to say that in order to protect players, it would be best if there is an announcement. So I think that a lot of the uncomfortable situations could be prevented. It's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive thing for both sides, and I understand. And yeah, I guess in these kind of circumstances, the respective tour managers should probably communicate better with players and understand that there might be a situation or circumstances where players would not shake hands, and then they should try to do something about it to protect players. But again, crowd's reaction differs from country to country, so you can't really affect whether you're going to get booed or not. Trust me, I know.
But we did see that in DC, the City Open this year. They made that announcement, and but we did talk to several WTA players about that issue. They reached out to us to try to push for that. And one of the things we talked about was it took until August of 2023, right, for that announcement to be made, and I don't know that it's consistently made everywhere. Yet the players who have been dealing with that issue have been dealing with it since for a year and a half, and I think that's another example of not really being in touch with the player concerns and the things that maybe are important to them, and not having a mechanism there to actually it's not that hard to do that, and they ended up doing it.
Novak, you and Bostic are obviously in very different situations as players. How would you kind of describe your relationship and what you've been able to accomplish together? He was saying it's hard for him he wants to leave tennis when the day's over, but he has to constantly get texts and emails and deal with issues.
I'm very grateful to Vasek for his efforts. Amazing guy. He genuinely cares a lot about PTPA, about this mission of uniting players, and he has done that for the last 5 years constantly. So he deserves tremendous credit for the energy and the time that he has put into it. And we're friends, and of course we talk about a lot of things, and privately he tells me that it's difficult. I know how difficult it is, because I'm in a similar situation in terms of competing in the professional tennis, and then still on the side trying to lobby with players and trying to kind of present PTPA and why they should join and embark on this journey. And it's much easier said than done. I mean, we know these players, we're with them, obviously sharing the locker room, but when you have to sit down with them and actually talk about some serious topics and get their attention, it becomes a little bit of a hustle and a challenge that it's very difficult to overcome. Not many players are very, can say, responsive with the emails and messages, especially during the tournament. So that makes it challenging, because in the end of the day, that's what I mentioned before. This is not our primary, not even, maybe even secondary thing. So that's why you have to kind of maybe fight through layers of agencies, tour managers or whatever, coaching team to get to the player. Sometimes we don't even manage to get to the player. But it's okay. You know what I mean? It just it would make our life easier if, of course, there would be more support from the tennis ecosystem and understanding of what PTPA stands for, and that it just needs to coexist with everyone else. But because that's not the case currently, it's better than it was 3 years ago, no doubt, but it's still currently not ideal position for us, so we have to kind of fight against the wind.
You try to pull Carlos aside or any of the top players aside and
Yeah, I've done that. I haven't done with Carlos yet, but I've been planning to. When we've been facing each other too much on the court, we didn't get a chance to relax a little bit. We did have a kind of a funny little chat after the finals in Cincinnati, and we agreed that we're going to play a golf round together eventually. So maybe that's going to be an ideal few hours for me to spend with him and have a little chat. The top players, with top players is toughest, because you can imagine there's more layers to them than any other lower ranked player, and then they feel they have a lot to lose, which is really what we've been trying to explain, that's not the case. Players really have more to gain, so nothing will change in terms of their legal protection of being part of the tour, doing everything that they've done so far, except being part of the PTPA, giving their signature, their name, which adds a lot of weight, positive weight to PTPA as an association. When you have the more top players you have, that's how it works. The better you're going to be off in the eyes of the public. Yeah. Thank you.
You could take him McDowell, right?
Well, Sasha Zverev played with him a few weeks ago, and he told me we have a good chance against him. Nice.
Two other questions?
with the New Jersey thing, just to follow up from before, is there any good stories you got about New Jersey from the New Jersey?
For the New Jersey news, I went to Tenafly, New Jersey a few times. Had a haircut there. I can't remember the name of the hair salon. I would, very nice people. Very easygoing. I would normally stay at home. Yeah, stay at home. If I go out to eat, it will be in the city. But Jersey is very nice, very much more quiet, but so in a great proximity to the city and also to the Flushing Meadows here. So and of course Gordon, who's a friend of mine, is my best friend here in America for the last 15 years, and I've been going I've been kindly always invited from him to stay at his place. His son Zenny, he's now 14. He's playing as well. So, my kids are friends with his children as well, and it's a great way for me to to spend some quality time with my friends and family and kind of recharge for the tough battles here in the Open.
You able to practice there? He's got practice.
Yeah, he's got practice. He's got actually 3 surfaces there. He's got indoor, he's got outdoor hard, he's got clay, green clay, red clay. He's got even grass. He's got a lot of things going on there. It's like all 4 slams in one place. He's amazing.
So you just practice on the hard court when you're there?
I get to hit on the grass a little bit, just to remind myself how it feels like.
But
All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.